Mother Teresa was once interviewed by a magazine reporter and was asked, Mother Teresa, what is the biggest problem in the world? Of all the problems that we face, which one is the biggest? And she was able to answer right away. She said the biggest problem in the world is that we draw the circle of our family too small. That's the biggest problem in the world, she said. We care a lot about the people who are related to us or about people who remind us of ourselves in some way. But we have a really hard time caring about people beyond that circle. They just seem too removed to us. So a lot of times it starts right away with our biological family. That becomes who's important to us. So if you're a Vanderveer, then you're important to me. Now, maybe I'm willing to draw it just a little bit further out. Maybe I'll say, well, really everyone in my country is part of my family. So then you might say, all right, all Americans. I recognize them as part of my family too. Maybe I'm willing to go a little further because maybe I've met someone from another country, I feel a kinship with them, and so I'll say, all right, well maybe people who are Caucasian, they're the ones that are in my family. But if we draw the circle like that, then that means there's a whole bunch of people not in our family, right? So if you're not a Vanderveer, if you're a Warren or a McDonald, no offense, you're not in the circle, you're not in the family, right? If you are Mexican or Syrian or Russian, well, if my circle is the people in my country, I don't recognize you as being someone like me. You're outside the circle. And that means that if I use race or ethnicity, then anyone with a different skin tone than mine isn't part of my family. I don't recognize them as being part of the circle. Mother Teresa said, that is the biggest problem in the world. Everything can be overcome if we could change that. We always start the first day of the year focusing on Mary, and it's for good reason, because she's the mother of everybody. There's our family right there. She's related to everyone. She's everyone's mother. And she shows us that we are all part of the same family. And how she manages to be everyone's mother, we hear about in the gospel today, because it's very clear that Mary had no crystal ball to know what was going to happen to her. She never knew what was around the corner. She was just like us. But we hear today that as things were happening, she kept everything. She didn't dismiss anything or anyone. She kept it all, and she reflected on it in her heart. Today is always declared the World Day of Peace by the Catholic Church. So it's not only this great feast day, it's also the World Day of Peace. And every year, the Pope gives us homework for the year ahead. And what Pope Francis has chosen for this year is directly related to the biggest problem in the world. Here's what he says our task is. We have to overcome our indifference to other people's problems. That's the task for all of us in 2016, to overcome the indifference we feel when someone is going through something and it doesn't directly affect us, so we kind of just move on. That's our work. It's as if he's saying, it's time for us to draw the circle of our family larger. That's our work this year. He says it's very important to start with this question, to ask yourself, when's the last time I cried over someone else's problem? Some of us cry over our own issues, but he wants us to think about how often have we cried over someone else's pain? And then he gives 3 examples. He said, when's the last time I cried when I saw someone else's child excluded or cast aside? When's the last time I cried when I saw someone with a drug problem who felt like they were in a hopeless situation? And the third one he said was, when's the last time I cried when someone suffered abuse in their past and can't get over it? When's the last time I cried for someone else? Before I was a priest, I taught middle school for a few years. And at that school, we discovered one year that we had a bullying problem. We weren't alone with that, of course. Lots of schools have that issue. So we brought in some experts to train the faculty how to deal with bullying. And they taught us something amazing. They said, don't even worry about the bullies. Don't focus on them. There's nothing you can do to change them. And don't focus too much on the victims of bullying, because you're not going to be able to change them much either. Your work is the bystanders. That's your work. They said, there are always going to be people who get their kicks out of being cruel to others. It's sad, but it's real. You can't change every bully. And there will always be vulnerable people. You can't help all of them know how to overcome a bully. But you can change the bystanders. And that's what we focused on. We created a school where kids were trained. When you see someone bullying someone else, you don't say to yourself, at least it's not me. You go over there and you say, that's not cool. You're not funny. I'm going to tell. It's not okay. And isn't that what we need to do to draw the circle of our family larger? Christians can never say, well, at least I'm okay. At least I've got mine. And you know, it's going to be a really hard year for this for us, because this is the oldest political trick in the book. Our politicians are going to try to divide us. They're going to try to say, well, as long as you're doing okay, these bums got to go. Don't worry about those people. They're just mooching. Or whatever. This is the oldest trick in the book. We can't let them get away with it this year. Our job is to overcome our indifference and to draw the circle of our family larger. To recognize that God is the Father of all, Mary, the Mother of all. We can never let someone be outside of our family circle. Many of you maybe have heard of a famous author named Elie Wiesel. He was in a concentration camp during World War II. He was a Jewish man, very intelligent, and his entire family was brought to a concentration camp, and out of every single one of them, he was the only one who survived. He's the only one. But just like Mary, he kept the entire experience. He didn't forget any of it, and he didn't try to move away from any of it. He kept it all, and he reflected on it in his heart, and he wrote several books about his experience. One of them was called Night, and I read that one. It was kind of a life-changing book for me. What he said he learned in the concentration camp, the number one lesson of going through that horrible experience, was that no one can remain neutral when other people are getting hurt. There's nothing holy about staying out of it and saying, well, it's none of my business. He said that's the number one lesson he learned. He said there's no such thing as staying out of it. When something is going on where someone is getting hurt, he said, whatever you're doing about it is either helping the situation or hurting it. There's no middle ground. We are either helping or we're hurting. We're either part of the solution or we're contributing to what makes it a problem. He said, being neutral helps the oppressor. It never helps the oppressed. Staying silent encourages the tormentor, he said, not the tormented. So, the work that Pope Francis has given us to do this year is big. We have to start maybe by asking that question he wants us to ask ourselves. When's the last time I cried over someone else's pain? Do I allow myself to watch the news and say, I'm praying for these people. I'm really focused on them. I don't just turn it off and say, oh, that's so negative. I don't want to see that. That's toxic. I shouldn't watch that. Instead, we go to it, we watch it, and we say, I want to mourn with them. I can't let my brothers or sisters be going through this and not be with them in it. How about my neighbors? Do I cry over the things my neighbors are going through? There's been some tragedies in our community this year. Am I part of that? Do I see that? Do I think about them and pray for them? Are my ears open to other people's crying? Is my heart? So Mother Teresa said, if we could overcome this problem of having too small a circle for our family, we could solve just about everything. What a great gift. So let's allow our hearts to get broken, because it's only by allowing our hearts to get broken again and again that maybe one day they'll finally get broken open and stay that way.